Good evening, everybody. This is the regular meeting of the Downers Grove Grade School District 58 Board of Education here on Monday, August 12th, 2024 at Bel Air School. This meeting is being live streamed for the public on the District 58 YouTube channel. Melissa, will you please call roll?
Member Doshi is absent. Member Ellis? Here. Member Hannis? Here. Member Harris?
Here.
Member Olchik is absent. Member Weiner? Here. Member Hughes?
Here. We're going to go ahead and start off the meeting as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, tonight members of the audience will have an opportunity to provide public comment later on in the agenda. The board asks anyone wishing to comment, please fill out a card and indicate the topic to be addressed. These then can be placed in the basket, I'm assuming over there to my, still over there to my right then, behind Todd. I have allotted 30 minutes tonight for public comment. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start with the non-action reports. First up is communication listed on tonight's agenda. Is one communication received by the board. Are there any other communications a board member would like to share at this time? All right, and we'll move on to the reports of the board. Start off with the superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. It's hard to believe, but here we are in August and back to school. The first day of school is Friday. School offices, they've been reopened for 2 weeks and a number of enrollments have been processed during this time away. Just as a reminder for those phase 1 schools, they were in partner schools in their offices, but everybody is officially back in their home school as of this morning. In fact, everybody was able to get in over the weekend as well. Middle schools were able to get in at the end of last week. In terms of enrollment, obviously this is something we closely monitor and during this time period and continue to see the majority of our classes across the district at or below class size targets. Justin will provide a full report at the September meeting, as we always do, on district-wide enrollment by school, by grade level. As of tonight, we have 1 certified position within our specialized programs and a number of open instructional assistant positions in several schools across the district. While we continue to actively recruit for these positions, with the school year starting this week, we've established plans to start the year with a combination of substitutes and reorganization of temporary existing staff and relocating them to where we have the need. We are grateful for the flexibility of our staff as we continue to navigate the current labor market, knowing that we are in a similar situation as many surrounding districts, especially when it comes to instructional assistants. I do feel very blessed to be in Downers Grove 58 as I talk to my colleagues not only throughout the county, but especially through the state. To only have 1 certified opening is pretty remarkable, so I want to commend our team because it is a very tough labor market out there right now. In terms of curriculum and instruction, I want to thank Liz and her team for an outstanding job. New Teacher Week was a success. We welcomed 17 new staff members to the District 58 team. Our new staff were introduced to district resources and learned about the culture and goals of District 58. This week was filled with learning opportunities as well as a time to meet district staff and mentors. Year 2 teachers also engaged in training throughout the week, including the opportunity to learn more about coaching cycles, and they also participated in positive psychology training, otherwise known as the Orange Frog. Thank you to our coaches, coordinators, admin, and many other on our staff for supporting this week. In terms of our materials, the vast majority of our materials have been delivered to the schools as the teachers are getting their classrooms ready for instruction. I want to point out the tremendous efforts of the curriculum department secretaries, the summer support staff, custodians, and curriculum coordinators who ensured materials were accounted for and delivered for teachers and students, despite also having to navigate the various instruction at the schools. So they did a tremendous job. Tonight for finance, we will talk later in detail during the business manager's report about the tentative budget and then the process for the final budget. In terms of technology, the final technology preparations for the upcoming school year are on track. Most student devices are ready and student and teacher accounts have been created in digital platforms. In phase 1 schools, most network equipment has been brought back online. In addition, we are partnering with construction vendors to configure our new access controls. Those are the pods that you do to go into schools, and paging systems in the new buildings. I want to thank James and Justin were present in all of our offices yesterday, making sure that all the technology was hooked up. So thank you for coming in on a Sunday. Special services, ESY, extended school year for eligible students with special needs is wrapped up and staff are busy preparing for the upcoming school year. In review of ESY, we are pleased to share that approximately 80 students received targeted special education support. You may recall the goal of ESY is to support students with special needs in retaining critical skills. As we review our exit data, we're pleased to share this summer of all the students who participated in the program, about 89% were able to meet their identified goals, so that was really good. Inconsistent attendance was the biggest impact for those that did not maintain skills. Thank you to our summer staff and to our ESY principals, Dr. Jacqueline Bedard and Lauren Hartilius, for their diligence in managing ESY. With facilities, we have a number of our construction partners here this evening. We have White & Company, Bully & Andrews, and then also Huffman & Keel. They will, during the discussion part, give us an update on construction and then also the owner's contingency and the status of that. For public relations, the 2024 District 58 Annual Report has been finalized and will arrive in resident mailboxes next week. So thank you to Megan for coming back on board and getting that out. As a reminder, this report features District 58 news, achievements, and recent strategic planning goals, along with a preview to the upcoming school year. It's the one publication we annually mail to all residents of District 58. So this is our big one that we put out every year. You can also view it online as well on dg58.org. The district also recently finished updating its English and Spanish family handbooks and added an addendum to both, outlining updates. We originally prepared the 24-25 family handbook in time for registration last winter, which is a great thing. But when you do that early, addendums will have to be put in place as laws and policies need to continually be updated. So that will be the process. And then we'll notify families when we do amend or put an addendum in the handbook. In other 58 news, the District 58 Foundation recently hosted their annual New Teacher Luncheon and sneak preview middle school orientation. That finished up today, and they are gearing up for Oktoberfest. I also want to thank the Lions Club, who annually hosts a luncheon for all of our new teachers and the new teachers of District 99. The New Teacher Luncheon for the Foundation connects our new teachers with several community partners, including the police and fire departments, the library, the park district, and of course, the foundation. Sneak Preview is also a fantastic middle school transition program that helps incoming 7th graders meet new friends and teachers, learn how to follow a schedule, and practice opening a locker. And I can even say that our construction partners are very familiar with Sneak Preview because we had to race and get everything ready. So they actually lended a hand in all of that. Finally, the foundation will host Oktoberfest. That is going to be September 13th and 14th. We are always looking for volunteers, and I will continually ask people to volunteer for that event. It's always a great thing, and all that money comes back to District 58. My final update has to do with construction, and I want to thank in particular Kevin Bartle, Jeff Newstad, the District 58 admin team, and especially our custodians, our maintenance team members. Some of our custodians and maintenance team members have worked for 14 days straight to ensure that our buildings are ready to go. And we appreciate all of their efforts. We had the opportunity to bring them lunch this weekend to thank them for everything that they've done. But it means a lot when you have people who are willing to work 14 days straight to get our buildings ready. I also want to thank our construction partners because I know that they also had 12-hour shifts, 14 days, Saturdays and Sundays to make sure that we're all set. So a big thanks to all of them for their support as well. Summer slams are very stressful, and they are right up to the end. My son is a middle school student, and at his school they are doing the same thing, and we just got the email today saying, when you're here tonight for locker night, know that everything is still a mess and we're working on it and all that. I think we're in much better shape than that, and I just want to thank all of our partners, especially the workers who made that all happen. And that concludes my report. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Just want to echo the how much the board appreciates how hard everyone's working. No matter, it seems like no matter when I drive by, there's a team there working, so we really do appreciate it. All right, that moves us on to the monthly business report. Start with Todd Grayfall.
Yes, you have the treasurer's report. In end of July, we don't have a year-to-date report. We don't have a budget to go against, and we just, there's nothing in there. So that you'll get at the next board meeting for September as we kick it off and have a full budget piece. What we want to talk about tonight for a little bit is the budget that just went on display last week. By law, the budget needs to be on display for 30 days prior to the board approving it. The board approval date is for September. So this is a preliminary budget. As with every year, there are changes from that, that presentation of that posted budget to to what we finally have as we tighten things up, and we'll talk about that. So, looking at, going through a recap page of beginning budget, revenues, expenditures, and then where we're ending up at the end. We still have, this year, last year we had a $500,000 transfer from operations into capital. This year we have $750,000. Year before, 2 years ago, we had $1 million. We had, those balances. That is in there. This is also, part of it is the $250,000 from maintenance. $200,000 is coming out of that sinking fund. That is part of the operation and maintenance fund that has been set aside or established for capital. So as we're doing these transfers, we're essentially moving that fund over a number of years. I think last year it started at $800,000. This year it's at $6,000 and so forth, and we'll keep going down. The other $50,000, that is essentially the maintenance grant that we have put in the capital plan as funds and revenue available as we transfer to capital. So as we apply for and get that state $50,000 maintenance grant each year, that becomes part of the money that we transfer out of the operations of the capital. There's one other item in here in conversations with our auditors. One of the pieces is our leases are paid out of, if you ever look at the audit, there is an expenditure for debt out of the debt service fund for leases. So it's to kind of clean up the budget format. Instead of having the expenditure in the operations and maintenance, the lease piece will be in there. There'll be some adjustment to this one, and then there'll be copiers that we pay out of education when you see the final budget. That those will not be expenses in the fund, but actually transfer over to the debt service as part of the budget process. Because those are actually where they end up being moved and paid for out of the audit. So it's to kind of try to match that up, and we have those in there. Right now, it is, revenue over expenses, continue to be that. We are under the 35% piece. We're not quite there yet with the fund balance. So that is what we're going to be working on between now and the time that we present that to the board in September, is to meet that fund balance policy. So this is based on an accrual format with the beginning balance and with expenses, which is pretty much how we operate. That's how our audit is presented. Questions on recap, or I can just go through this and then we can probably talk about it. Go back. On the revenue side, can't see that? Doesn't work there. Yeah. Screen. Property tax, about $4.86 million increase. Again, this year, corporate personal property replacement tax, which is a tax collected by the state and then it's sent back. That had gone up significantly during COVID. It has eroded over each year. And again, this year we anticipate, we don't have a final number on that, but we have a reduction right now of that fund coming in. Evidence-based funding, we did get that report last week. We increased for the first time, we increased significantly in that it was $87,000. We've lost $50,000 from one year to the next. We've increased $5,000. A big chunk of it is because we've moved off of Tier 4 into a Tier 3 position on the evidence-based funding format. So therefore, we're able to receive additional funds. So that was welcome news from that standpoint. As well as also transportation reimbursement. The board has seen, we've talked about transportation costs. We'll talk a little bit about that expenses in a minute. The state works on a reimbursement system where all the expenses of the district are incurred in 1 year, and then the state reimburses the following year. The point that although that's kind of a standard format, we all know that exists in Illinois, and that's just how we do it. That's not necessarily a thing for every state. Other states do a quarterly or monthly system of reimbursement to school districts for their expenses. So this is our format and our structure. And as you have significant increases in given years that you have to absorb, it has an impact on, our balance and recovery, and then you're waiting for the reimbursement. And then sometimes and oftentimes those are prorated, below to the reimbursement.
And not to make a joke or be flip, oftentimes we find the prorated amount actually gets prorated from that. And so
Yes.
when the state says they reimburse transportation, two issues with that. They never fully reimburse it. It's a year in the rears. And sometimes when they tell you, hey, we're gonna prorate it at 81%, it even gets reduced further from time like that. So it's a very unreliable number to budget, if that makes sense.
The federal grants, we sorting through it in aggregate, presenting and pushing what our federal money is. We used very effective last year using up, and allocated our federal grant money. The last quarter of those funds we just received in July. We received actually the end of July, because it's on a quarterly basis and we can't file the reports until June 30th. That revenue goes back into the prior year, and we assume that these federal grant pieces are where we believe that those funds are going to be. There's a portion of this that is the remaining part of the ESSER funds. Those we've actually already ordered things, and we will spend those. We have to spend those in the first quarter, so July, August, September. We will then submit that claim in October for reimbursement from to the federal government, and those funds are then quickly done and closed out. So, what will be interesting is to find out sometime in January, the federal government is how much money was sent back from government, state, and local governments to the federal government of these funds maybe not utilized. Expenditures. Overall, from a budget to budget, we're about an 8% increase. One of the things, and this is where we're talking about we need to make adjustments. The salaries are based on our projection models of where the contracts are, increases, and rolling over from the actual expenditures from last year. We are now, as we're able to go through, sort out all of the allocation per position and per account. So we know already from today that the salary lines, we've got some decreases in those areas that are come down because we just simply don't have the individuals. We rolled up based on contractual increase numbers. When the actual comes in, they're low. So those adjustments will be made and accounted for and adjusted in the final budget. So those will bring some of those down. Some of the big increases from over the last couple of years for the district, I call kind of the cost of doing business and things that we have very limited control of. First, I'll talk about the last one is the workers' comp, property casualty, legal liability insurance. We had a 33% increase. And anyone who's had their homeowners renewal policy come in, I looked this up because I just got mine. You can see what those increases have been. Obviously, the district is not immune to those, and so that's been an increase for us to know when we plan for that piece. But it is an impact of $160 plus $180,000 from the prior year. The big piece, and one of the things that when we were going through looking at 24 and closing out 24 was the huge significant increase in transportation against budget. We exceeded our budget by $1 million, and we were just kind of weren't sure how that came to be. And then we started going into all of the detail, looking at a couple things. One thing we found we have to adjust on how we are accounting for breaking out our vendor structure, because we have, for us, any event to a homeless student is considered regular transportation. It's in the regular transportation account. Our accounts are set up so that we can respond to and fill out the claim. We need to do some sub-funding, some accounting, and so forth, so that we can, on a quick basis, look and see what some of these funds are doing on a basis. One of the things we went back, and this is something other districts have asked others about, is transportation costs for homeless students over the last couple of years. And we went back 4 years, and you can see where we have been. 2001, we had an expenditure of $200,000. When we closed the books on 2024, we were pushing $1.5 million, or 22% of our total transportation cost was for homeless transportation. We asked some other districts for where they were at, and we were a little bit startled. Naperville is the only one that's higher than us with 19,000, 18,000. I don't know.
A lot more than,
A lot more students than us.
26.
Yeah. Well, that's Indian Prairie. Indian Prairie.
Oh, I
has-
thought you were talking about Naperville.
Yeah, but Naperville, yeah.
I think, Todd, you have them flipped up on there, so the sheet should read Naperville 203 and then Indian Prairie District 204.
Yes.
We'll have to fix that.
Yeah. But if you look at, so District 99 is made up of 5 or 6 elementary school districts. Ours was at 1.5, District 99 is at $500,000. The two combined are about, in essence, over $2 million. We exceed Naperville's transportation costs. We double what Indian Prairie's are, and we haven't even added in the other districts that feed into 99, into the much smaller amounts, but it's a huge impact that we're looking at. And we have been working this year with District 99 and Woodbridge to combine routing and to work with our main vendor for student, who now, for the first time in 4 years, has capacity to take on additional work. We are starting this week with permanent bus drivers in every route but one, and that information was 2 weeks ago. I would be surprised if that's actually the case. And if in fact we don't have permanent drivers on every route, that's the first time we've had that in at least 3 or 4 years, certainly since COVID. So they have capacity, they have some management ability now, because the managers aren't having to go out and drive routes, but they can help manage and help work us through this piece. So we're hopeful and that we're going to be able to combine and reduce and manage some of these costs. But it's been a significant increase for us, and impactful to cover that expense on a year-to-year basis. And you can see what we've been doing over the last several years. And it's something we'll continually work with the county and others, and try to explain the impact that this is having on the district, because it certainly is significant. Questions on that?
One other point I want to underscore, and we are proud to serve any students who come into our district. The reason why this is such a big issue financially for the district is because if the homeless students are concentrated in one area of the IHC, even if they don't attend District 58, the second their address changes to the IHC, we are now tied to them for transportation. So if they're living in the IHC and let's say attending school in Bloomingdale, we have to pick up half of the cost of that transportation. So ours is much more higher than District 99 because it's a center that caters to families with young children. And so, for instance, at Bel Air School this year, we had 17 or 18 students move out and 17 students move into the homeless center. So your enrollment might not necessarily increase, but now instead of being responsible for 17 students' transportation, you're up to 34, 35 students. And so we're gonna have to continue to have conversations because this thing is going off on an exponential ramp. There is only so much that a district can do to absorb this cost. And we are gonna get to the point where we're gonna have to start making adjustments in the services that we deliver unless we can get more support from the county and more support from the state because of the centralized model. And so I do have concerns, this year, getting the 35% fund balance is gonna be a challenge. Next year, in order to do that, we're gonna have to start looking at what's essential, what is non-essential, and then making some strategic decisions or cuts for our school district because we can't continue to absorb this without having that impact the services that we deliver. So what are some things across our district that we've done over the last few years that we'll have to take a hard look at? We offered, because of learning loss, several positions that first were funded by ESSER that now are starting to get absorbed by the district, right? And so those might be some things that we have to restructure, or perhaps, and I'm using very general terms here because we have not done the full analysis, but any of those added positions. Class size is another one. You know, when I first became superintendent, we had combination classes, and please know I would never advocate going back to combination classes, but we have significantly reduced class size in our school district. If this continues to go where it's going, you know, instead of having classes of 18, 19, you might see more classes of 24, 25, those types of things, which are still very reasonable numbers, but because we have all this extra cost, we can't continue to absorb this and run business as usual. We're gonna have to hopefully get more support from the county and more support from the state, but I can't promise that. So if we don't see that come to fruition, we're gonna try with every legislator, every county board member, the regional office of education, all of those things, to get additional support. But if we're not able to make that happen, then we're gonna have to start to take a look during next school year about what things, you know, can we scale back on, because we won't be able to afford it all.
Now, Kevin, when we were first talking about this a few years ago, when we were planning this was our concern. If you go back to that screen that was just up a couple seconds ago, because I'm going to tell you, looking at it this way paints a scarier picture for me. Because if you look back from 21 through 24, it's almost doubling year over year. You know, when you go to 21 and we're looking at just over 200,000, it goes nearly 400,000, then it jumps to 70. Now you nearly double that at almost 1.5 million. This is a growth pattern that, do we see this leveling? I mean, is there a trajectory where we're 2.8 million in fiscal year 25 on this?
The reality is we don't know. I mean, I hate to give you an answer like that, but when I talked about the exponential nature of the curve here, we don't have it graphed out, but you can see about the reason I can't tell you if we know or not is we never know how long students are going to be staying at the IHC. So you could have a situation where it's even worse than that if you have quick turnover where maybe a child stays there for a week or two, but still gets tied to our district. But then if they move out quicker, then you can have more students move in, which means it can get worse. If you have students who stay there for long periods of time, it doesn't get as worse because you're not having that move in, move out situation. And so I do fear that this can continue to grow because each time you are tied in with a student for 18 months, sometimes even longer, with that, with the McKinney-Vento legislation here in Illinois. So I don't know the full impact of this, nor will we ever, just because of the nature of the mobility.
The one thing about the IHC is it is the first and last drop on the routes. So we're able to put, I mean, when they went to having one facility as opposed to having, you know, people in 3 or 4 different extended stay hotels, we're able to put a route that, you know, for the elementary school and middle school that serve that area, that they begin there, so anyone else on the bus doesn't know where they're getting on. And it's the last stop at the end when they go back, so that they're dropping. So that piece is helpful. One of the issues is, and this the best example is, we have shared agreements with other districts where when someone moves into their district and they are homeless and they're established residency here and they're attending here, they then are, you know, they're get a letter from the district saying we're going to share 50-50 costs. We have 100 of those between what we ended the last fiscal year with 100. I think
100 districts?
100 agreements that we had. Yes.
Okay.
Now, we went back and I said, I want to trace names. And so they traced 40 names that we have that live outside of the district that are coming back in, that are living in another district that we have agreements with, that their original address was IHC. So they may have been in last year or the year before at the IHC, but they are still considered homeless because of their in a wherever they're staying isn't permanent residency for them. And so therefore, there's an agreement, we're splitting the cost between those districts. But those, those students are coming back and are still enrolled in our schools because that is what they're entitled to under the law.
Right, but the whole design on the IHC was to have quicker turnover. This isn't in any way a permanent type location.
Correct. The idea behind the IHC is to provide people a temporary solution, and then there are other solutions that DuPage Pads has where they have more like an apartment style and things like that. So the model for the IHC, I think they found a lot of success in, and I am not here saying that the IHC isn't a successful model and that students aren't welcome here. We don't have an enrollment issue as a result of the IHC. What we have is a law that was written not assuming this kind of a model. And so because the model is a centralized model, it hits that centralized district very hard. So what I think we're in is a situation where the centralized model has solved a lot of the county's problems. It certainly has helped DuPage Pads work more efficiently and more effectively. But one of the side effects of that is that the school district that houses it now is on the hook for all of this transportation long after a student moves away. And so that is what we're trying to wrestle with here. And as you see, each year kind of gets more and more and more. And I do have concerns about how that impacts. And we voiced these concerns when it was passed. But I do have concerns now that we've lived this for several years, not with students attending our district. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying. The transportation model needs to be supported by either the county that put this in place or the state board who really looks at this as a model example. And really, it is a model example on many levels, but it just doesn't help with our transportation. And that's the issue that we have.
So Kevin, what kind of conversations have you been having with the county and the state to try to get additional support? Like what kind of feedback is coming from them? What is that looking like? 'Cause it
So I
seems
think
like
we
that's our
have-
best avenue.
Yeah, I think now that we've lived this for several, so to answer your question, the feedback that I have is, yes, we will talk about that, or we need to talk about that. Let's gather some data. And so now that we really have the data, we need to go back and really push our local legislators. And look, this happens all the time with different things in Springfield, where you have a really good thing taking place, but maybe there's something that took, or a consequence of that people weren't anticipating. And I think that's what we have here. So I haven't had anyone that, said to me, well, too bad Downers Grove 58, you're on your own. But I think when you're looking at those numbers and you look at a district like Indian Prairie that has almost 30,000 kids, in our district, 5 times smaller, is absorbing this huge cost. Something has to fix here. Otherwise, it is going to start really impacting the services that we can deliver as a school community, and negatively impact the students that we're serving from the IHC as well, right? Because this would be, felt by all of our students. So it's been receptive, but let's look at the data. We'll see what that is like. And so now we're at the point that we're hitting that critical mass that we really have to put this front and center on everybody's radar. What I don't want people to think is that, this will be an overnight fix, or that anyone has promised me anything. They haven't. The issue that we're going to have is when fiscal budgets get written, the state is on the same fiscal year as we do. So a lot of this will be, if we are able to make progress, down the road progress. So in the interim, we're gonna have to come up with solutions. Hopefully we'll get a long-term solution, but if we don't, please know that through this school year, we'll be going through conversations about, okay, these are our costs and they're going up more and more. What are things that we need to scale back in our own district for?
One last item is on this list is the increase in private placement out of district special ed costs. As the board as we've talked about over the last couple of years, is the ability for the district to have brought in programs in-house and to lower its special ed costs by meeting the needs of students and being least restrictive according to the laws that to meet those needs. We're able to do that and control and keep many of those costs down. What we are seeing now, what we had this last year, was an increase in students who have needs that are beyond any type of facility, what we can have in our buildings or in district. So they are, we're utilizing SACIT, as well as private placement. So, those areas also have some increases this year as we're looking at and anticipating, those costs and those increases as well. So those have an impact. And those can have a significant piece, because you can have one or two students who come in, that have some very significant needs and have, and need very, care that has cost. Again, because it's a reimbursement the following year, we do get a reimbursement of anything over 2 times our per capita costs, but we get it the following year. And again, it could also be somewhat prorated if necessary, depending on appropriations. So,
And this is this is not a 58 unique problem. What we have seen since COVID-19 is everyone's special education numbers have gone up because of lack of access and things like that during the pandemic. So this situation that we're talking about, I would venture to say pretty much every district across the state is talking about increased special education. Where I think we're in better shape than most because we have made a concerted effort to bring so many of our services back in. So I don't know where we would be at if we didn't do that, because that's really helped to stem some of these rising costs.
So as talking about the revenue, we are positive, we have revenue that's including the 750. Budget currently is under the 35%. However, that is what we are doing to clean that up, straighten up, go through and evaluate and determine what expenses need to be adjusted, how we can go forward, as well as any of the revenue that we still have estimates on that we may be able to formalize up with no transportation this week as to what that current number will be on the claim as we get that submitted, and then working through and then presenting to the board a budget that will be within its policy with having capital transfers and even that 35% fund balance piece. So that is our next. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, this is a dumb question, but if we're revenue over expenditures, how have we not met our fund balance?
So you met the first goal of our budget, which is it has to be balanced and you have to have a surplus. In order to hit 35% revenues over expenditures, that number that you're saving has to be greater.
Oh, I see.
And that we're not quite at that number yet because we still
The
have.
overage isn't enough to equal 35%.
Correct, you need more in surplus to have a 35%.
Okay.
It's a percentage of our expenditures. And our expenditures keep going up every
Sorry,
year.
that was
So our
a
fund
question.
balance has to grow with our expenditures.
Okay.
Right, so
So-
fund balance and revenue have to be up higher both, to cover every $1.35, $1 plus 35 cents of every expense.
Yeah, so
But it will be by
We will put together and make sure we have a budget for you.
yeah, so basically when we're expending $1 out of the operating fund, we really have to think of it as $1.35
Yep.
in order to grow.
And just so when you look at this, Dr. Russell asked me a question. The state form on the back of this last page of the state form has what the state looks at as operating funds. They include the ed, the O&M, the transportation, and working cash. In our operating piece, because we're under tax caps and you don't get to cut a piece of the pie and put it separate for IMR Social Security, we include ed, O&M, transportation, the Fund 50, which is the IMRF and Social Security costs the employer pays, as well as the working cash. And that's our operating funds that we look at to meet that policy and meet those balances. So, just if you look at what we have a recap versus what that form is, the state doesn't consider that piece for whatever reason as part of an operating fund.
Kevin, what is the expectation with big action in September that we'll start to see these get refined and posted somewhere where the board can see them in preparation? That way we can reach out and ask any questions prior to the meeting, so we don't have to create a special meeting later on in September.
Correct, so our plan is starting next week to provide the board with updates on Now that we have done a projection, we have the actuals for salaries in, look at the adjustment. Or in order, like we did X, Y, and Z to get this to 35%, so that the board will know anything that maybe we had to scale back on or do a little bit differently this year. So when we ask you to vote on the budget, we will be updating you on a weekly basis of how we got to that 35%.
Yeah, because I think one of the things we want to make sure of when we're looking at that is there are some things that we've adjusted that then hold, and then there's other stuff that, well, we may have made a change, now pops up next year, right? You know, there's a difference between making an adjustment that feels permanent versus taking something and moving it into the following year. And so we just want to make sure.
Absolutely. So our other thing that we will do when Todd comes back in September, just as he has highlighted any key things in this tentative budget, any of those changes from what you saw from the tentative to the actual, we will highlight those as well. So you can have kind of a summation of everything that we updated before.
We have a see in September, don't we?
We do, I believe.
Six.
FAC is,
On the 6th.
yeah, we'll fall on the 6th. So we'll get that out as well.
I have a couple questions on just some of your revenue numbers. Can you explain first? Like I'm looking at interest, I'm looking at fees in the operating funds. Both of those seem to have pretty significant drops compared to 24.
I went back to the actuals and then presumed that if interest rates fall and fund balances, we would get less than what we're actually. So a lot of those I went back to look at what we were actually going to, what we actualized last year. And then what I thought we might have the following year, based on. So I actually have, I think, a meeting coming up where I'm back here to talk about investment funds and so forth. To see what we can do. But I also, I mean, the revenue projections in many of those cases, we do local pieces, are going back and looking at where we finished in 24, trying to be more conservative in revenue projections, as opposed to what we've seen previously, because some things materialize and so forth. We have like rent and things like that. Obviously, we don't have two classrooms that we're renting out to Sasset because of construction, so those get reduced.
Yeah, the rent one made sense to me. So interest, I mean, I know we're anticipating rate cuts. Talking about like our fees, is that I was thinking Okeep, that was my first, but that shouldn't be.
It wasn't
a year ago,
actually,
so that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I looked at where we're at actuals, and I'm going to go back and look at that to see how we ended, because we'll accrue back some from July, and that may come back up. But again,
Shell game at this point.
Well, I went back and you go back and look in May, June, and in July where we end, and look at the individual accounts and see what's happening. And knowing that we've got to, be a little better off. And so trying to make sure that I'd rather come in over, that number than come in under it.
And then, am I correct in assuming that when you look at property tax, the change is 7.4%? So the difference between that and 5 is that's a lot of new construction. We had a good year of new construction, basically.
We had a good chunk. So our fiscal year is split by each fiscal year has 2 levy years involved, right? So fiscal year 25 has the second half of money coming in from so the levy that the board approved. Well, that one, that comes in the spring.
Yeah.
But the one that the board voted for last fall, that the bills went out in the spring. So to give you a sense, 46% of the bill that you received in the spring is in the 25 budget. 53% of the next year is in the 25 budget. So it's a heavier weight on the next year, which is obviously a compounding piece because you have, a growth of 5% from the prior and so forth, and then you have we have a 3.4 plus, actually the levy projection, because we see some valuations starting to slow a little bit in growth, mainly because we have such a diverse property index, with commercial property and so forth. Because under tax caps and property, sometimes the lower EAV growth helps out and more beneficial for increasing the tax levy from year to year.
My comment is, I appreciate the narrative. It's good to have all these details in terms of like there's a lot of interesting pieces in there that help us understand why we are where we are. I would just, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that if we don't hit 35%, that's a big problem for the district long term. My point of view is if we're off by $500,000 in this fiscal year, since we seem to be having a hard time meeting this policy through no one's fault. That's just the situation because of our revenue. But if we miss the mark by $500,000, then we're starting next year, FY26, $500,000 in the hole. It just makes it that much harder to hit the 35%. So I would encourage Dr. Russell, Todd, you know how I feel about this. I won't support a budget that doesn't meet 35%. And I know I'm confident that we'll be having a different conversation a month from now, but I encourage my fellow board members to exert the same amount of pressure in making sure that our community's investment in this district is protected by this board exercising good fiscal judgment and making sure that we are safeguarding our dollars for the future.
Okay, so we're just expecting this to be a part of our weekly updates.
Yeah, so you will get weekly updates on our status and how we're going to accomplish that. We have again, I think the actuals. Once we get the actual numbers in there, that'll be the first thing that we update you on, just kind of see where you're at, and then as we go through, we make adjustments to what are those discretionary things in our budget that aren't nice to have but not essential to have. Those are the things that we're going to keep working through. We have been meeting on that. We have some ideas that are in draft form. It'll be a challenge, as Todd said, but it is something that we think at this point we're going to be able to do. It won't be easy, but we're going to be able to do that.
And this is the first time in this early time of being on the board for me where we're sort of still tweaking, but to this degree. It's always getting tweaked every year, but it feels a little bit different this time around. To get it done. When you're doing this then in real time leading up to it, are we tinkering with the 5-year plan at the same time?
We actually, when we do a 5-year, when the next 5-year plan comes, we start again from this,
right,
and build. So what we will do, we do a January projection. So we look at 6 months out as to where we estimate we're going to come in, and then in that updating of that projection of the year, that's where we build our 5-year plan on what's happening, where we think things are going to land, what we're going to do, and go forward. So obviously this new budget and that projection is where we think we're coming in January will be the model for that and how we go forward with what that 5-year plan looks like and what adjustments need to happen for fiscal year 26. Depending on if that's rearranging schedules for because in the 5-year plan we have the curriculum update schedules and the technology schedules. If some of those things have to get tweaked and looked at and worked and reviewed as part of that process, that's when that happens. Those pieces, so that we can maintain and manage all of that.
Any other questions for Todd? All right. Anything else in the treasurer's report?
Nothing else.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. A little boring on the committee front. Policy committee is not met. Neither is legislative committee, or the financial advisory committee, or the district leadership team, or the health and wellness committee. So that brings us to the SASC report.
Yeah, so for SASC, SASC has their opening week. Like us, they are struggling, but we are not struggling at the the state level they are. I think SACIT has approximately 90 positions that they are still trying to fill. Obviously, you're not going to be able to fill 90 positions, even if contractual services can't help you with that. So what SACIT is in the process of right now is reallocating staff to make sure that the essential positions get covered. But I do think whether you're public or private, many IEPs will have to be amended, because if you have in your IEP, the student gets a one-on-one aid and you can't find that one-on-one aid through no fault of the district, then the district, in this case SACIT, is going to have to come up with an alternative plan in order to meet those needs. And so, but the year is off to a good start in SACIT. The new director is firmly in place and is working through not only building relationships, but really setting the stage for new communication levels at SACIT, new departmental structures, and just making, in my view, the organization flow more like a typical school district, which I think will be very helpful. Kim, the new director, has been very receptive to feedback and ideas on how things can go smoother at SACIT. One of the things that they will be also looking at is their long-term facility plan, because SACIT's lease is up in their current building on Ogden Avenue. Is really not a supportive place or the best place for students with special needs. For instance, they do have classrooms over there, but it doesn't have an elevator. So a special needs co-op needs to find a place that is more conducive and more accommodating to learning. So they are going to be going through an exercise with all of the member districts on how do they offer as many services as they can in a centralized location, identify a better facility, but still stay within the budget. And so we'll be working with them. As you know, we do have SACIT rentals in our school. Lyle 202 was able to help them significantly in this interim period until they can finalize their plan, because they had an old elementary school with half a wing that was not being used. And so SACIT is going to centralize their location. That building is being sold and knocked down. And so over the next 2 years, SACIT will need some help. Ironically, that timing matches pretty well with us, because that's when 6th graders will be moving over. And so I anticipate that we'll be able to meet some of their needs. But with our growing specialized programs, we can't meet as many of the SACIT needs as we used to be able to. But certainly we want to work with them, to partner with them as much as we can. So new organizational structure, facility plan forthcoming, and trying to meet their staffing shortages are the big things that SACIT is working on right now.
Questions or comments on SACIT? All right, that brings us then to the discussion portion tonight. This is a look at the owner's contingency, specifically for the soils in Herrick. We have an action item coming out later on in the agenda, as well as a look ahead at the phase 2 construction. So
yeah, so Jordan, we also have Jordan from Huffman and Keel, Peter from Bully and Andrews is here, Amy from White is here, and Ben is here also from Bully and Andrews. Jordan will take the lead, but I do anticipate anyone will be able to answer questions. Really today is we're going to ask the board to vote on the soils at Herrick, so that'll be a very brief, just kind of refresher, and then forecasting big group 2, what that's going to look like for phase 2 at our elementary schools, and specifically we're going to have a conversation about the owner's contingency and how kitchen serveries, at least for the infrastructure, can play into that. Nothing on that will be voted on tonight. That would be something that will be voted on at the September meeting. Go ahead, Jordan.
Sounds good, thank you. Good evening, and again, Amy, Ben, Peter are here as well from the team, from the project team. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me or either any of them. Really 3 main things on the agenda tonight. So obviously, like Dr. Russell said earlier, just to celebrate obviously where we are, finishing up with SummerSlam, that's huge. And then a general status update, and then we'll talk about budget and the contingencies. So first, general is, pictures worth 1,000 words. So here are several of the schools. Again, if you've not been out to some of these sites or driven by, anybody to do so. You can see here the pre-catchment gym, the storm shelters there, the corridor there. You got O'Neill, the LMC, fresh tile in the bathroom. Henry Puffer is the first of the 4 elementary schools. Again, the fresh finishes there are something wonderful. Again, several more photos from the project sites. Obviously, the biggest expenditures are the mechanical systems, unit vents and such, and so unfortunately those aren't as thrilling to see on photos, so finishes instead, but suffice it to say, it's exciting to see that.
Can I just make one point right here? If you look on the bottom right, those are the office spaces. One of the things with both the office spaces and the bathrooms is we made them uniform, not necessarily in shape and square footage, but in materials. And so if you have an issue with the carpet at Whittier, we have some more in stock, or the countertop, or the bathrooms are similar tiles. Same with the floor and the corridors. We really designed that not only to have a district standard, but also to help should you ever need to replace any of those things.
So, general project status, in terms of design, again, right now, obviously the elementary schools are finishing now, and the middle schools are just weekly field coordination with the design team. And then the phase 2 elementary schools are upcoming, so those will be for next summer. But the construction documents right now are being wrapped up over the next month. So 90% construction documents, CDs, are the ETA is August 19th, and then those will bid this autumn. And then phase 3 elementary schools, 2025. HGA, which is authorities having jurisdiction, multiple different parties, obviously health and ROE, etc. But third-party inspections are underway and really wrapped up for phase 1. And at the time when we were developing these slides, we were preparing for final sign-off. And then ROE submission for elementary schools phase 2 is just forthcoming because we're wrapping up those drawings, what the company is. In terms of owner direct scope, again, this includes testing, furniture, equipment, etc. So furniture install is underway. You saw that in some of the photos. And then moves are ongoing in coordination with the construction completion, along with coordination with the district's own staff. And that hybrid has allowed there to be some cost savings rather than having to outsource a bunch of the management. Put a cheeky photo in here for pulling a rabbit out of a hat. A huge thanks to the whole entire team. Everyone was hounding and working really hard with ComEd to make sure that we got transformers. So if you weren't aware of that concern, great. The rest of us were. But we still do need the puffer transformer. Ben's working on that. Not his fault. He's working. He's
removed. We got permanent power to allow for.
Yeah.
So I think the one celebration is when you walk into the schools and the new renovated spaces. It is cool in there. In fact, we were joking. We got our first concern today that it was too cold in one of the spaces, so you know we're moving forward.
Sometimes the pendulum swings too far, right? That's
Yeah.
what happens. In terms of bidding, again, if Peter been wanting to comment any further, but long lead equipment, you saw that you approved that in June, and so that was just for phase 2 of the elementary schools. And the remaining scope will be in October. And so rather than having 3 bid packages as we did for elementary school phase 1, we just have the 2 bid packages.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is when the referendum passed, we quickly got into design, which we got to market as quickly as we could. This was the phase 1 elementary schools. Put in perspective, we're going to be coming for the phase 2 elementary schools for full board approval in November. These phase 1 schools that we're currently wrapping up, we got full board approval on those in March. So we are about 4 months ahead of where we were last year. That would just allow us to really a lot of upfront investigation that we've been completing, making sure that we've got tighter design documents, and really allows us to make sure that we're getting them in front of any supply chain issues for proper procurement of all those materials.
Which is a huge step in the right direction. In terms of construction, again, OMS and HMS on schedule, approximately 25% complete to date. And then specifically, I listed a few items here for the O'Neill Middle School renovations and the portions that were just for this, wrapping up for this summer. And then, of course, the additions are ongoing throughout the next year. Similarly for Herrick, again, main focus for the renovations this summer versus the additions that will be ongoing over the next year. In terms of elementary school phase 1, again, those are the 4 listed here. The critical tasks this month have really just been those ongoing inspections, punch lists, and moves. There are some open items, so again, if questions come out in the community, like, oh, what about this, and like Dr. Russell said earlier, there are just going to be some things that are hang out there a little bit. Lead time issues, like Peter just talked about, that we're addressing for phase 2. Things like that just are hard to get in when you have a summer slam. You have very limited time. But suffice to say, they're well documented, and those will be completed in very short order. And then, of course, just coordination with staff. Staff has to be very tolerant of the working environment, particularly on the custodial side and admin side, of just like, okay, these construction crews, the move management crews, how are they gonna get out of our way in time? So it's been a lot of work. And then in terms of budget, we'll hit that next, and that'll be basically 3 parts. Just a quick summary, and then we'll talk about the phase 2 budget. Here we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the contingency. So here's the budget snapshot. Again, you've seen this before. I put a box on a couple items. Again, O'Neill and Herrick are rounding out as of mid-July when this invoicing was when this was invoiced through. They're at 23.2%, and then elementary school phase 1 50% completion. Again, a bunch of other numbers here. Feel free to ask any specifics on it, but we'll zero in on the phase 2 budget next. And then after that, we'll talk about this $8.1 million in owner contingency remaining and where we suggest allocating that.
So really, this is the phase 2 budget. Basically, King 3, Indian Trail, Belmont, and Lester are the next 4 summer renovations that will be completed. Really, on the left is your original concept budget. You know, when we originally complete these concept budgets, we base off of square footages, not knowing exactly what the existing systems were. And now that we've gotten further on into design documents and stuff, off the 50% construction documents, we've been able to do a lot more refinement, upfront investigation, and really narrow in on what those, where we're at with the current budgets. You'll see we've now updated our original concept budget, which got to that $209 million that the board has approved. We've updated this budget to include kitchen scope adjustments, which is the infrastructure only that we were as part of contingency discussion, the low voltage recabling that has previously been reviewed, and then the door replacement at these 4 elementary schools, which has been previously reviewed. Basically, the adjustment in that budget to include those 3 additional scope items, we are basically $242,000 under budget with the current 50% construction document. So overall, we're in a good spot with where we're currently at. We would intend to go out to bid in mid-September. The bidding period would be September through October. We will reconcile all those to the scope reviews, and then we're looking to come to the board for action item and for November board approval of the entire phase 2 elementary schools. Any questions as relates to the phase 2 construction?
So I'll go back one real quick. So again, you'll see this number reflected right here, the projected cost. Now we'll skip forward to the discussion of contingency, and after this is another table to describe some of the narrative that's shown here. So again, quick recap on just overall picture of what contingency is. So again, carried early on was escalation and design contingency. That is, again, to accommodate for design development as it's maturing, right, through the process. And that is held in the Bullying Andrews budget numbers. The item number 2, construction, again, that is construction contingency, not to the owner, and that is allocated with the team's oversight, including White Company, Public Keel, and the district, of course, during the course of construction. And then finally, the one we're here tonight to talk about is the owner contingency. It originally started off at 5%, and so as we showed on the other slide, we started at $10 million. We're currently at that 8.1 mark. A couple of comments on the positive outlook where we stand today here in August. Owner contingency has not been required for non-elective items to date. So that's really good news. The fact that we're able to get out of the ground with Herrick, O'Neill, and those additions, as well as tackle all 4 of those first elementary schools, is a big deal. And the fact that we are now nearing 90% completion of the CDs for phase 2. Item B, middle school, I just said that one. And then item C, elementary school phase 1 construction contingency allowance savings is estimated at $500,000. So again, there are some allowances to deal with existing conditions, etc. And so some of those money are going to be coming back around that $500,000 mark. Again, great news.
So Jordan, can I just jump in and clarify?
Please, yep.
That means that we're estimating $500,000 that didn't get used in construction management contingency in phase 1 schools, but then thrown back into the owner's contingency. So that number in the owner's contingency will go up for us, which is
8.1866.
which is like great news.
Again, on the sort of flip side, in terms of future risks and considerations, the unknowns, right? We don't know what the future looks like. Again, just flipping back 9+ months, right? Middle school bids total $3 million under budget. Elementary schools bid $3 million over budget. Like your commented earlier, we're bidding at a much more optimal time on phase 2 elementary schools. So we can't look back and say, well, now we know what the future is going to be in either phase, either huge savings or an overage, right? But it's just a commentary so that we're all going in eyes wide open. But we feel in a very, very positive spot. So tonight we're talking about a couple recommendations. One is an action, the other is not. The first is the allocation of $417,000 of owner contingency toward the Herrick Soils issue. Again, I've been briefed on this. Feel free to ask questions about it if you have any questions in that memo. But this is an appropriate use of the owner contingency. It's a pre-existing condition, as well as the fact that it, by allocating these funds, it saves us having these very detailed conversations about all of the infinitesimally, or perhaps exhausting small items of construction development during the course of construction. Meaning, we show up at board meetings 2 months after a decision needed to be made to say, hey, can we spend $10,000 to address this duct that needs to be replaced? Hey, can we spend $20,000 to deal with this? So in aggregate, we could spend a lot of time coming back and back to the board repetitively during the course of construction if there's an overage on construction contingency. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's why we would say, hey, look, it's an existing condition, and then secondly, it's a nice singularly packageable use of owner contingency so that construction issues can continue to be addressed in a timely manner. The second one is the allocation of $353,000. Again, this is a budgetary number to the phase 2 serveries infrastructure only. And again, this would not be for the equipment. That can be deferred. We can purchase that after the bid results come in for phase 2 this October.
Question on that. Does that number include in phase 2 doing that to the phase 1 schools as well?
It does not.
So
Yes,
where's that number?
I'll break that down right here. So, okay. Nope. All right, so phase 2 serveries infrastructure, 353, we're suggesting slide that over. The phase 2 serveries equipment only, which again we could talk about in October after the bid results come in for phase 2. That, the 200, the 199, so we can hold on that. The phase 1 and phase 3 serveries and infrastructure and equipment are shown below 600 and 347. So in total, the serveries are 1.5. We're just simply saying, hey, look, right now the drawings are finishing up for phase 2. Now is the time to do it to take advantage of the efficiency of construction crews being in those buildings, right? And that we're not going back and rework.
So you're saying to rework phase 1 during phase 3?
Correct. Yes, 2026.
Not doing phase 2.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't do it alongside? Is it because phase 3 is easier? Because phase 2 is a long summer. That that's why I'm asking, right? Like we just have a,
Yeah, phase 2 is a longer summer, primarily because the amount of work that has to get done in the middle schools during phase 2.
right.
During phase 3, the reason, or our reason behind waiting phase 1 kind of retrofit or to go back,
Right.
is because you have 3 schools going on in the summer when phase 3 is going on versus 4 in 2 middle schools like we have now. So the middle schools really die down in that final summer. You have 3 schools, so that way you can concentrate on going back into the phase 1, those 4 schools, while they're working on the 3 schools, knowing that the middle schools winding down. So that was the thinking behind that.
Right. Okay.
And then again, that budgetary number of the $500,000 is not a board decision, but just something to simply recognize. Look, that is going to slide over to the one-foot allocated column. So if we did that, so currently started at 10.3. Have allocated the 2.2, and so we sit at 8.1, which you saw on the previous slide, and then if we made those shifts over, then we planned at the 7.87, and again, with those future phases of the serveries, putting that at 6.7. So again, a very healthy spot to be. A few comments, we talked about this previously, but again, alternates are developed as quote unquote wish list items, right? These are things that the owner says, hey, gee, we would have loved to have this in part of the base project, but now we can allocate money for that, enabling doors, servers, etc. And they can be allocated when you feel comfortable as the burn rate of the contingency is in a good and confident spot, which is where we feel we are today. So again, timing is key. So consideration for lead times, consideration for already working in the space, not having to come back into the recruit on things too. Are the main considerations there. Overall then for the project, well, any questions on
In phase two,
this?
then, you're looking at, including the servery, the infrastructure for it, just part of our standard bid.
Just part of the standard bid, so that way, yeah, exactly. Yep.
That way, we talked a great deal about it. You can always certainly separate it as an alternate, but then the issue that you have is now you've got your standard drawings for the bid group, then you gotta do different drawings for the alternate. While you certainly can always do that, our recommendation is, because the contingency for all the things that Jordan said, it is much easier to just put it all in one for the people who are bidding on it, for our team, for everything. If we're able to do that, let's just go ahead and do it.
We were a
that way.
little unsure early on. Obviously, we hadn't seen any work done. We didn't know how our contingencies were going to work. Paused a little bit last time.
Right.
However, as we just came out of the budget talks, one of the things we didn't talk was the impact that not being on the National School Lunch Program is having on us, as our needs for free and reduced lunch are continuing to go up. So the need for this infrastructure is probably going to really become pretty critical for us as we go forward, especially because that can overall, in the long run, when it comes down to delivering lunches to students, will actually save us money over time because we can get reimbursed for those lunches. So it makes a lot more sense, I think, than we were a little more concerned when we were still talking about phase one. We didn't want to dip into the contingency too much. I think you pointed out, like, how do we know how comfortable we're going to be when we get to phase three, right? You know, we want to make sure we're not waiting on it. So, all right.
Well, I think the other thing too, why we did, and I agree with everything you said, we always viewed phase one is the most complex set of schools in this whole thing. That doesn't mean we won't find surprises in phase two, but I think it's fair to say, especially a building like Whittier, when you look at its age, we were just so unsure going into phase one, not knowing what we were going to find. We ended up in just a much better spot than I think any of us anticipated in terms of not going through all the construction management contingency because of that.
Well, and that's what you see reflected on, similarly to Whittier, right, on Herrick, right? Older building compared to O'Neill, right? And so you see just a faster burn rate on the construction contingency usage because of things like that. The thing is, between two schools, when we average it out, we're still looking at healthy spots, so it's not overly great concern to give it the owner contingency for construction related items.
Any other questions on this budget stuff?
Comparatively, you know how I feel about it. I'm always worried about it. Comparatively, right, to other schools. So we're talking about, because in my mind, improvement for one school, you're improving it for all of them, right? So in my mind, it's 6.7 is where we're going to be, right, after tonight, if we say yes. So given we're in year one, being at this phase, at this stage, knowing the work we're going into in the middle schools in the second year, we're feeling very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Super comfortable.
Super comfortable.
Melissa, I asked that same question.
Yeah.
One of the things that helped put me at ease, of course, I always have the caveat, I can never guarantee anything. When you look at where we're at, especially with the middle school construction, is we've been in the rooms, we've been behind the walls, where so much of the work in phase two, especially at Herrick now, is all new construction taking place outside of the schools. The new offices, the library addition, the extra classroom addition, all the footings are in for those. So now it's just the above ground new construction work. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have surprises, but there's certainly less unknowns than there is when you're going down in the basement or the lower level at Herrick, in opening up where univents used to be or pipes and all that fun stuff. So there's never a guarantee, but phase one, if there were surprises, you have more of an opportunity to find those surprises in phase one than you will in phase two or phase three. You're still going to see, but not to the level, hopefully, that we saw.
And again, we deal with the uses side of the equation, not the sources. So I think it's a worthy conversation. Say, look, if you were not at 209, if you're at the end of the day, you're at 207. You're at the end of the day, you're at, again, I'm not a betting man to say that, but what does that do? What does that help in terms of the sources side? And again, that's not neither here nor there for me, but something for the board to consider. Quick snapshot of the schedule, again, very high level. much more detailed trade by trade studies, obviously. Again, just to draw your attention to elementary schools phase 2. So again, we'll be bidding and evaluating those bids. Renovation right here. So bidding and evaluating those bids here this autumn, with the award on November, our plan will be a November 11th board meeting. And a little bit of snapshot what this fall looks like. Again, I noted up here, OMS, obviously there's some classrooms going on, so if questions do come from the community about that, those renovations will be occurring this autumn. Any other comments on schedule?
Sorry, I missed that last part.
So at O'Neill, that they are working inside the school in an area that we cordoned off, so that is where the labs will be going out outside of the school, but inside the school where we had our professional learning center, that wing that we walk through, that will be going on too.
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah, you
first
guys
floor.
have it closed off.
I believe
Yeah.
it's six,
Yeah.
6 classrooms on the first floor.
Right.
And then we've already completed that demo a little bit ahead of schedule to try to avoid some more noisy work once school starts. And then we turn over those 6 classrooms, I believe, during winter break, and then we go up to the second floor and kind of flip flop those classrooms.
So right now, I don't know if both middle schools were 25%, but it's at middle schools 25% completion. What percentage is that as far as construction is when we get into the school year?
The end of, so next June,
This coming June.
this coming June.
At the end of this school year, like how much is getting done?
I can follow up with that. I would say we would most likely be at 80% going into it. I was probably actually more. I don't think we have more. I would think probably 85%. And this is actually what we build out to July 15th.
Okay.
So come August 15th, those percentages are going to be much higher because we put a lot of work in place from July 15th until now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bump up significantly next, into this phase.
Sure.
So Jordan, for the board, what they're gonna be asked to vote on in November is the remaining portions for phase 2 with the suggested items that we're adding in for the servers.
Yes. So yeah, these right here, the phase 2, 603 has already been incorporated, the interior doors, 330 has been incorporated, and then just the amount of should be over the,
To Melissa's point, the doors are already included in there because you already made that decision.
Yes, we
for one
already made
school.
that
Yeah.
decision.
We have
for
it
one
with the
school,
servers,
so
but
we
that
did
is
it for
exactly
all.
how we're presenting this information to the board.
any other questions on that?
Questions? I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody.
So the transfer the contingency on the soils for Herrick are on our agenda later on today. Obviously, we'll talk about it at point 2, but if there's any questions or concerns about that, have another discussion, please, thank you. So, questions or comments on that? Okay. And that brings us to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to share public comment with the board, but it is not intended to be a time for members of the public to enter into a dialogue with the board. Issues raised during public comment may be added to future agenda items or addressed by administrative staff when appropriate. The board has allocated 30 minutes tonight. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. At this time, I don't see any cards. Are there? Nope. All right. Is there anybody here that would like to make public comment? All right. All right, first up then is the approval of minutes. Are there any suggested revisions to the minutes as presented in the packet of materials? All right, if not, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 8th, 2024 regular meeting as presented? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carried. To approve the minutes of the July 8th, 2024 regular meeting as presented. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 29th special meeting as presented?
Some
I think so.
Yeah.
Second.
And then All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. That brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any items a board member would like to have considered separately at this time? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of the personnel report and the financial statements consisting of the list of bills and summary?
So moved. Second.
All right, Melissa, please call roll.
Member Weiner. Member Ellis. Member Candace.
Aye.
Member Harris.
Aye.
Member Hughes.
Aye, the motion carried. The consent agenda has been approved as presented in the packet of materials. We have some recommendations for action. First up is the reimbursable paid lunch cost. Is there a motion to approve the meal pricing as noted in the attached memo?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's please call roll.
Member Harris.
Aye.
Member Weiner.
Aye.
Member Ellis.
Aye.
Member Candace.
Aye.
Member Hughes.
Aye, the motion carried to approve the meal pricing as noted in the attached memo. Next up is the approval of policy updates from Press Issue 115. Is there a motion to adopt the Press Issue 115 policy updates as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Just to let you know, normally we do have a first and a second reading on these. This is one of those issuances that has to do with rules that have been put down. Specifically, there's one in here regarding Title IX. So we,
Not this one.
oh, I'm sorry. That's 116. Okay.
Yeah, for 115, Derek, just to clarify,
Okay.
good one.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
115 is primarily 5-year reviews.
Okay.
And so we're not recommending any changes as administration, so we don't have to, do anything to those policies. The other piece of that are either simple language changes or as response to laws being updated, legal references, those kinds of things. So nothing really of substance that had changed from our original policies that we had in there. So that's why we're recommending just a simple adoption, but because there are some legal references, those have to be put into place so we're in alignment. 116 now is the title.
Yeah. Yeah. So anytime we have something, they technically have to go into place as of August 1st. So the first meeting that we have, we have to make sure we can take care of that. So any discussion on that? All right, let's please call roll.
Member Weiner. Member Ellis.
Aye.
Member Candace.
Aye.
Member Harris.
Aye.
Member Hughes.
Aye, the motion carried to adopt Press Issue 115 policy updates as presented. Next up is the approval of policy updates for Press Issue 116. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. This is the one, same as the last one. We have to put a policy in place to lead along with the rules. What's interesting about this one is that because it's Title IX, there are several lawsuits in actually more than half the states right now, and some of the states have actually ruled against enforcing these rules at this time. So Illinois is not one of them. However, there is a lawsuit. Was it Kansas? That for the Moms of Liberty, that anybody that joins that lawsuit, regardless of where they are, could have to roll back to their old policy, but it's not district-wide, it's by school. So we will obviously be keeping a copy of our old policy. We may at some point, if this ruling is overturned or whatever, we may have to revert back to our old one. Just as a note, this might be something that comes up, but it is one of those things that is required because these rules do have the power of law behind them, and we are required to have a policy that matches those in place. We tend to continue to use the press policies from IASB because they meet those minimum requirements. They tend not to do a lot to add additional stuff into the minimum requirements, but I'm sure that either Dr. Russell or Mr. Sissel will be able to answer any questions that you guys have on this particular update. But again, it's one of those, by ruling, that's why we're not having the first reading.
One of the things that if the courts continue to keep this in place for the Northern District of Illinois, which is the 7th Circuit, at some point in the fall, Mr. Sissel, who is our Title IX coordinator, he would then come in front of the board and present, what is the difference between this policy and perhaps the old policy? A lot of it, just to be blunt, is more administrative requirements and the process that you must follow while investigating claims. I want to reassure the community that old policy, new policy, all students Title IX rights and all staff members will always be protected, irregardless of what a set of administrative procedures may require or something like that. The rights are protected under both.
Yeah, I mentioned this now because I don't think we've ever had a policy that we were approving that I thought at some point might actually have to revert back, so I felt like it was worth
It certainly is uncharted territory for us, so I don't want to get too specific on the advice of council, but we have been informed, like most districts in Illinois, to yes, because these rules do carry the weight of law, you must adopt the press policy because it does provide you with how to implement those rules. However, keep your old one just in case a court puts a stay in, or perhaps it's ruled unconstitutional, then we would have to immediately revert back to the old policy.
Okay. All right. Melissa, please call roll.
Member Weiner.
Aye.
Member Ellis. Member Hannis. Member Harris.
Aye.
Member Hughes.
The motion carried to approve, to adopt press issuance 116 policy updates as presented. Next up is the serious safety hazard designations for 24-25. Is there a motion to recognize the areas listed in the attached memo as hazardous walk areas for which fee-based transportation will be provided? Any discussion?
So just no changes from last year, same hazardous routes.
All right, Melissa, please call roll.
Member Weiner.
Aye.
Member Ellis.
Aye.
Member Hannis.
Aye.
Member Harris.
Aye.
Member Hughes.
Aye. The motion carried to recognize the areas listed in the attached memo as hazardous walk areas for which a fee-based transportation will be provided. We have construction and consent agenda tonight. Are there any items that board member would like to have considered separately? If not, is there a motion to approve the construction consent agenda consisting of the items as presented in the packet of materials?
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's please vote.
Member Weiner.
Aye.
Member Ellis.
Aye.
Member Hannis.
Aye.
Member Harris.
Aye.
Member Hughes.
Aye, the motion carried. The construction consent agenda has been approved as presented in the packet of materials. Announcements. Monday, September 9th at 7 p.m. will be our next regular board meeting. That is scheduled to be at the Downers Grove Civic Center, so fingers crossed. I don't believe we have any reason to go into closed, but we do have closed minutes from last meeting. Is there anybody that would like to go into closed to discuss those minutes? Are we sure?
Sure.
Totally sure. All right, then, if not, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July 8th, 2024 closed session meeting and keep them permanently closed for reasons of confidentiality?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carried. All right, now I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All
Aha.
right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carried. Will now be adjourned at 8:28 p.m.
How about that?
Record.
No.
Not a record.
Right.
Not a record.
Record, several records.
Still good.
I think we're
Oh, yeah.
Regular meeting? He always runs some
Yes, it is. Sorry.
July's
I
our
apologize. Right.
July's is
Barbie house.
I mean,
We always have